I'm going to do an oscillating chemical reaction. I have a real problem when I talk about demonstrations because I always start everyone with, this is one of my favorite demonstrations, and it's true. I have a lot of favorite demonstrations, and I think so do all of you. Why is this one of my favorite ones? Well, it's not because it's an easy topic, because it's not an easy topic to explain. But I think it comes at a good point, and it allows you to see some unique chemistry, some chemistry that is hard to explain, but really focuses your attention on some concepts that otherwise you couldn't teach. And that's one of the things that makes a good demonstration as well, because it's effective then, in addition to being fun. This one is called Yellow-Blue Switcheroo. It's an example of an oscillating chemical reaction. Now, when you're teaching your unit on chemical reactions, you're going to talk about single replacement reactions, and then you're going to do double replacement reactions, and decomposition, and combination, and so on. So you're going to talk about all of these different types of reactions, and you're going to show them. They're going to study them in the lab. And at that point, they're going to think, your students are going to tell you, what is there left to learn? I know everything there is to know about chemical reactions. So just when your students tell you that I know everything there is to know about chemical reactions, then you take this one out. And I think it will show us that chemistry still has the power to surprise. And I hope that's something that we want to teach our students a lot as well. What I have are 3 reagents, 3 solutions, and I'm going to start pouring them here. I'm going to use, in this case, sometimes I say, you know, the precise amount is not important. In this case, it is. And so I need about 80 milliliters of each. And I'll go ahead and tell you what I've got here as soon as I get my 80 milliliters. My first solution is potassium iodate. And it is an acidified solution. It has a little bit of acid in it. That acid is important for the chemical reaction to take place at a good rate. My second reactant is going to be hydrogen peroxide. This is about 9%, a little bit less. And we've basically optimized the concentration for this reaction. And it is easy to remember in this one. The precise amounts are important, but you use equal amounts of all. So I had 80 milliliters of the first one. I want 80 milliliters of the second, and again, this is about 9% hydrogen peroxide. Oh, we can hear that. And just about, you know what, I'm going to get a plastic pipette here and just top it off a little bit so that I have equal amounts. And again, I'm getting 80 milliliters. So I went ahead and added the hydrogen peroxide, or actually I've just measured it so far. And then my third reactant is actually a mixture. It has some starch in it, so that might give you a clue as to what we're going to see. It has malonic acid. Malonic acid is an organic carboxylic acid. It's a diacid. And we also have some manganese sulfate, manganese 2 cations. And the manganese is going to be a catalyst for this reaction. So what I'm going to do, again, I need equal amounts, 80 milliliters of all. And that one I think I got pretty good. That's good. All right. So we have 3 reactants. And what we're going to do is pour them together into this first beaker. So I'm going to add the first one. And these are all colorless solutions, you'll notice. Colorless solutions. I add the second one. We're still colorless. And I'm going to add the third one. This is nice because you really don't have to stir it. Immediately upon adding the third one, turned yellow, and then it turned blue. Okay, so far so good. But what's going to happen next is it's turning colorless again. And then it's turning yellow again, and then it's turning blue again, and we'll keep watching it. It's back to colorless. Wait a minute, what is going on here? When I said that this is chemistry that has the power to surprise, this is unexpected. Usually when you do a chemical reaction, you have reactants, you go to products. You're done. In this case, though, it seems like we're going back and forth, and I don't know if you can see that up close, but if you look at it, we have produced some gas in there. It's hard to see when it's dark. I can see it up close here, but let's see when it goes colorless. Do you see some gas bubbles being produced in there when it's yellow? Again, we'll see if we can focus on that so we can see the gas bubbles that are produced there. This is the reaction of potassium iodide. Isn't that nice, the way that just comes down? That blue color just appears right away, almost from the top down. Let's watch that again. That's fun. Just whoosh, and then it goes colorless again. You can see the bubbles now. You can see a lot more bubbles being produced. That's some carbon dioxide gas from the oxidation of malonic acid. Remember, we said the malonic acid was a carboxylic acid. It has two CO2H groups, and some of those, that molecule gets broken apart and you get some CO2 gas that you see there. Now remember I said that we had a hint that the third reactant had starch in it. So we're getting that characteristic dark blue color. And what do we think that is? If we have starch, what do you think gave the blue color with starch? Is iodine, of course. So we have some clues as to what's going on here. You know what I'm going to do, because this is kind of fun. That one's going, you can see it's bubbling a little bit more. So we have some iodine being produced. Now, I had equal amounts of solutions in my second set of bottles. So what I'm going to do here in the second beaker is I'm going to add them. And I'm going to do it the same order. I don't have to measure it, I don't think. Let me see how much. Actually, I do, because I'm gonna go larger than my amount. Sorry about that. What I'm going to do here is go 100 milliliters in each. I thought I had a big enough beaker there for all that was left. That's okay, though. And we'll go ahead and add our second reactant, and we're going to go to 200 with that, and then our third. And remember, it immediately, upon acting that third reactant, it turned yellow, then it turns blue. We can watch that one and see if it goes in sync or out of sync with the first one. It's gone. They're going to compete here a little bit, I think. Yellow, blue, call that the yellow-blue switcheroo. I want to talk about the chemistry a little bit. It's a fun reaction to watch. Students always ask, well, how long will that go on, that yellow-blue switching? This one, you can see, is bubbling a lot now. It starts getting quite a bit darker. Almost gets a little bit of a metallic-looking color to it. There is some iodine that's produced in that chemical reaction. I want to talk about what an oscillating chemical reaction is and why you would want to teach an oscillating chemical reaction. It's not, as I said, because it's easy to explain. There are several things you can use. When you talk about kinetics, one of the last concepts that you usually cover has to do with what's called the reaction pathway or the reaction mechanism, which has to do with how actually the reactants are transformed into products. And the reaction pathway is a very abstract concept, so you can't do an experiment in the lab with it. What this illustrates is basically what happens if there are two different reaction pathways. Now, I'm going to give you the very simple explanation of an oscillating chemical reaction. It's one chemical reaction, two pathways. So there are two possible ways that we can transform those reactants into products. Now, one pathway produces iodine, and the other, and iodide ions and iodine, and the other pathway consumes iodide ions. They both end up producing it at the end. So one process produces iodide, the other one consumes the iodide ions, those two different pathways. And essentially what we're looking at in this oscillating chemical reaction with this color changes that keep repeating themselves is that we're going from one pathway to another. The analogy that I use is like a pendulum, okay? So the pendulum is swinging. We have pathway A, and that produces iodide ions. And then it produces iodine. We get the blue color. But then it swings to the other pathway, and that consumes the iodide. And so the color changes are due to oscillations in the concentrations of iodide and iodine that are the iodide in particular, being produced and consumed. So when the iodide is low and the iodine is low, it's colorless. When the iodide is low and the iodine is high, it's yellow. That's the color of the iodine. When the iodide and the iodine are both high, then it's blue, because that's that starch-iodine complex, which is actually triiodide. So it's a pendulum. We have two pathways. It swings from one pathway to the next. And again, we're just talking about two alternate reaction mechanisms, ways for the reactants to be transformed. Very physical sense. You can really see this one bubbling now quite a bit at it. How long will that go on? About 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes. It depends. The concentrations here do matter. You need to have the precise concentrations. The one interesting thing otherwise about an oscillating chemical reaction is that the only time you see this is if you are far away from equilibrium. You know, one of the downsides, you teach equilibrium, and students say, well, eventually every reaction is going to reach a position of equilibrium. Not so. If your concentrations are so far away from equilibrium, then this is what can ensue if there are two pathways. This is essentially, you get an oscillating chemical reaction. That pendulum is swinging from one way to the other, and that cycle will repeat itself. So the yellow-blue switcheroo, an example of an oscillating chemical reaction. As I said, I think it proves that chemistry still has the power to surprise.